Welcome to a special, yours truly Sunday edition of Rock and Roll Rainbow Dragon Geopolitics. It is 11 in the morning. We're going to do a little bit of flexing, encouraging all to work out, train, exercise, working out. Training and exercising has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice. And gotta commence, always begin. This is the second Sunday, of course, it is. Sunday. On that Sunday, we're going to do a lot of dancing in the coming week. Dancing is yours truly's favorite sport and fitness activity, independent, geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist who's financially stressed, but grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, and we're gonna go for a little bit of an overtime with geopolitics. I'm an independent, geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist who's, although financially stressed, grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and this is gonna go rock and roll before the Donald Trump inauguration. Of course, we gotta focus as the North America on the North American Collective, yours truly, Quebec, Canadian, North American, open for business 24/7. Encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Working out, train, exercising has been, is, and shall continue to be yours truly's medicine and therapy of choice. Big kisses from the goddess, help, support, build the forgotten goddess temple. That is my will to build. The forgotten GODDSS. We're gonna go into a little bit of mystic appellation, mystic interpretation. I'm being a mystic myself. Wanna be Telemite, bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey, that Hampton, and we're gonna drink a little bit of that coffee. Grateful, thankful. I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend who got me a set of cutlery like this, and it has that rainbow right at the back. So I'm auctioning this for $1 million to give 50% half to my anonymous friend, and auctioning 93% of everything that you see in this room off Sun Temple, underground room off Sun Temple, Dragon's Lair, where actually I had COVID in March 2020. I thought I was gonna die, so soon I'm gonna be marking 5 years of surviving COVID. I thought that was it for me, and I said those are my last days. And right here where I'm close to about a meter from here in this room off Sun Temple, I had COVID, and I was out for like a few weeks, like 2 weeks, whatever the case may be, mid-February to about mid-March or so, between mid-February to about mid-March 2020, and I got 3 vaccines, triple vaccinated, encourage all for hygiene, public hygiene, because we got those microbes, bacteria and germs that we got to be mindful of every time we go. For example, when I go to the bank and press the buttons on the machine, I always disinfect my hands, so it's something which we got to keep. Public hygiene, and although you see here is a bit colorful, in my underground room of Sun Temple, I like to keep it that colorful. Love bright colors. Red is my favorite color. So rock and roll, sending some LOV to my fellow Quebecers, Canadians, and North Americans. This Quebecer Canadian was born in the USA 3 times in previous incarnations, past lives. Once as a woman was born, sometimes my reincarnations was born a man, a woman, sometimes, today I get that 50-50, but I was born in the USA 3 times, twice as a man, served in the United States Army, post 1776, same army, different wars, 156 years apart. Gotta give some LOV. First and foremost to the firefighters fighting the firefighters in California, my brothers and sisters in California, firefighters, specifically the firefighters, gonna send some LOV to them, some encouragement, and please, millionaires, mass finance, those who don't have insurance, get that redemption on the file. Time for that redemption of the North American Collective with some action. Millionaires, please be charitable, give 10% or whatever the case may be, give $1 million or $1 billion to the reconstruction of the California. I gotta salute LOV the firefighters, and all firefighters who are involved, gotta be credited to them. Some good massage therapy session across the North American Collective, mass finance them tourism to come to Canada or get some massage therapy sessions, some spa sessions, some revitalization for the body. Myself, I'm gonna take a bath later on today. I wish I could afford a massage therapy session myself, but the firefighters deserve it and earn it more than yours truly. Even the firefighters here in Quebec, Canada, United States, with the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, LOV, the truckers, sending some LOV to the truckers on the road now, to the daycare workers across the North American Collective. We're gonna change some diapers, of course, to the butchers, the bakers, those in the grocery store clerks now, those in the cooks on the fast food, flipping some burgers, flipping some cheeseburgers, making some sandwiches, making some salads, whatever the case may be that they're doing, all the way rock and roll for all the 50 states plus Canada. Here, the great true north, strong and free, to that strong and free, as we say about Canadians being a Canadian, got that Canada tatted right here and that freedom on the side. So This North American calls for the North American unity, for the North American Union to create a common passport, a common currency, and a binational, strong binational integration like the National Hockey League, which is really binational, not national. And of course, just like the newly foundations of the PVHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, which I love, and that's going to be my first expense whenever the time comes that I have some money, because right now I'm BROKE, but my rent's paid, electricity bill's paid, and got food and coffee, and actually got some sweets, which I'm really happy and content for. So encouraging all to work out. A special event dedicated to the firefighters in California, LA, specifically to the firefighters in California, LA, specifically to the firefighters fighting the wildfires in California. This session is sending some love. My main messages to my fellow North Americans, Quebecers, Canadians, is with consent and hygiene. Hug, HUG. Hug like you never hugged before. And please, NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB, give 10%, give 10% to charity, and give 1%, give some millions, some billions, and owners of the NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, NFL, MLB, and billionaires, please mass finance the reconstruction of of Los Angeles, of the buildings that were destroyed. Mass finance, of course, with yours truly's dream to build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. My will to build, and I gotta salute the construction workers, because they're gonna go on steel toes and on the cranes, and with knowledge and information and with all those brains and those muscles, they're gonna go, the construction workers, and gonna build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, which is my will to build right here from the North American Collective Civilizational Complex. Androgynous, pansexual, Aspie artist, got Asperger's, and that's my neurological mental divergent condition, which is not a mental illness. It is a just neurodivergent mental condition and psychic condition, which makes people with Asperger's predisposed to obsessive, also known as special concentrated interests. I do not like to use the appellation terminology obsessive interest, because obsessive interest entails a more negative connotation to the word associated thereof. But of course, the word to be used is rather special focused interest. And my holy trinity is geopolitics. The study, the analysis of geopolitics is happening 24/7 with this independent rock and roll Aspie artist, athlete, philosopher, mystic, and geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist. And not only geopolitics, but sports and fitness. And dancing is my favorite sport activity. Dancing is my favorite fitness activity, parallel to rock and roll. So gonna rock and roll for those firefighters on the road, for the truckers, for the butchers, always for the grocery store clerks, always for those doing some cheeseburgers, making some hamburgers, some cheeseburgers, some pizzas, those doing the deliveries thereof. So got a little bit of coffee here. Thank you to my anonymous friend who gifted me some coffee, and I got to thank for the donation of some coffee.
These lights are not turning on anymore, right?
Hey,
These lights in the hallway, yeah. They realize they have to be charged.
I love those houses you put. They're really nice.
Houses. Oh no, I'm talking about these automatic, the things that sensor lights.
Yeah,
They're dying. It's time to charge.
time to recharge them. I have double AA batteries. If you need.
They have to be plugged in. You recharge by plugging in.
Oh, that's so cool. Anyways, I'll see you at 1 because I'm busy now. For math. So I gotta give a little bit of salutation to those who give the donation for the coffee. I was actually budgeting to get coffee, and of course the coffee prices have increased. And just by parallel, the next day, I hesitated. I didn't buy because it was a bit pricey. So I said I'm gonna wait until the special comes. And somebody had donated some packs of coffee in the fridge here, and with other donations so I got it. So it doesn't say the country of origin. That's my only critique. If I do criticize, usually I put some counterpositions and I put some alternative course of action. Usually my criticism, I usually compensate by putting an alternative course of action. That's how I criticize. If I do criticize, it's an alternative course of action. And of course, thank you. I got this as 227 grams. This was donated, so I'm gonna keep on making coffee with Dragon. Thank you for the donation of this coffee. It's ground coffee grains, and it says here world of flavors. It says made in Canada, but it's of course not made in Canada. The coffee beans come from somewhere else. So that my only critique is that you should put that the origin of the coffee beans, whether they come from Vietnam, because Vietnam produces a lot. Brazil is still #1 in coffee production. Brazil, and of course it could be Guatemala, it could be countries of Africa, Uganda, Ivory Coast, Ethiopia. It could be those countries, of course, in Africa, Asia, of course, Vietnam, and of course South America, down Panama, Costa Rica, or even Cuba. It could be. So please just write the country of origins of the beans, because it's not really made in Canada. But I'm grateful, thankful, thank you for those who donated this coffee, and I tried it. It's not bad at all. It's not bad. It's not bad. I guess it's more of it's for. I gotta check the prices on the market. It's a Mark International brand, Neo Cafe, but I gotta check it myself for whatever the case may be to get doing on the go, and to get doing on the a little bit of gratitude with that. And I also gotta give a shout out for another donation, and I got this caramel in Quebec. Caramel, it's called caramel rosé des champs. It's caramel rosé, and rose des champs was not bad at all. So I'm saying, as an alternative, if we export these, of course, in the United States now, with the threat of incoming new administration, with the threat of tariffs of 25%, we got to do everything in order to avoid and reach a consensus and a complementary agreement for the Canadian North American civilizational complex. But I got to give a shout out, and actually this was donated also to yours truly, along with the coffee. So it's a Quebec Canadian product, and of course I do say, if it's Canada, US, I do consider it local, because usually when I say local production, I usually mean North America, because I am a North American. I believe in the North American integration and North American union fully, and I have been for years advocating thereof for part of my dream, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, and it's caramel. It's made in Les Éboulements is a city in, of course, Quebec, and I really want to go there. It's a nice name, Les Éboulements. It makes a little bit of good rock and roll song with it, so I gotta sing a little bit of rock and roll song for that. And always gotta be meditating, of course, that they produce this great caramel. It's produced at Charlevoix. Charlevoix is a region, and what's written here, of course, we could do double trouble. I don't mind translating, although it's just written in French. It got some English. It just says here that it's caramel and roshan, so it's also with butter. But here in the back it says it's made with love, amour, in Charlevoix, made with love in Charlevoix, and amour, Charlevoix. And of course, I always say that's always good to go, because in the true North, strong and free, cannot be just true North, strong and free here in Canada. We gotta have some loving, and in the USA, the home of the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we both got free in our mottos. Canadians, we got the true North, strong and free. United States, we got the land of the free and the home of the brave. Here we got the true North, as in north, south, east, west, true North, strong and free. But we gotta add something to that. We gotta add some LOVE. We gotta add some LOV, because it's not all about fight. If I got some love, some lust with it, I bring my rainbow flag 24/7. I'm been part of the LGBTQ community online in the open for more than 7 years now, being androgynous, pansexual, and I'm not perfect, far from it. I gotta give a shout out to my fellow Aspies. If you have Asperger's, and especially if you're neurodivergent, part of a minority, you have encountered many obstacles and positions, and with employment, and on being misunderstood, and sometimes maybe even getting in trouble with the law, because you don't understand social norms and social protocols, and there might be some things which you might do thereof that you're not even aware that you're doing, and whatever the case may be as an Aspie, and I gotta recommend this book, as I recommended Appreciating Asperger's last weeks during December. I read a great book called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. So that goes a bit further, and that was more recent publication. This is from the 90s, and this is one. So the Oasis Guide to Asperger's Syndrome, the Oasis Guide to Asperger's Syndrome, the Oasis Guide to Asperger's Syndrome. So if you want to know more about it, you have to be mindful of that. You have to be mindful of that, what it is, and just you see now that it can be a little bit on the clumsy side with the Asperger's. So those are things which can happen, in the interpositions of dealing with Asperger's as a neurodivergent mental psychic condition, which is not of course, a mental illness. It is a neurodivergent mental psychic condition which makes people with Asperger's predisposed to special interests, special focused interests, where we are super concentrated and super dedicated when we work and where we are involved in discussing those specific interests. And me is geopolitics 24/7 from the morning till the eye. For many, many years I did geopolitical analysis, and I do it on the daily. It's the geopolitical analysis that, of course, I consequently do on the daily basis. And today I got to focus on the new development, the coming of the new administration of Donald Trump, and the threat to impose 25% on all goods this time. And if you remember, of course, I'm going to repeat it, that back in 2018, yours truly, prior to the 2018, I wasn't really involved in politics. I was more on the sidelines. When I really got involved in politics as a Quebecer Canadian was in 2018, when Donald Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel of 10%. And before that, I was more an observer from the sidelines. That's when I really entered the rink, the arena of politics, and I have been since then, challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match. Back then, I started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border, and then on a rink made of Canadian aluminum and steel, joint Canadian-US aluminum and steel, joint Canadian aluminum and steel. And let's merge that star with that maple leaf. You know, that's maple leaf and the star, we can go together. You know, you got that red in both flags. It has red and white. It has red and white, and you have the stars. So we can blend the stars and we can blend the maple leaf together. We have to unite and create a common passport, something similar to the European Union. I firmly believe it. An integrated for security, service, and defense. But my brothers and sisters, millionaires and billionaires, it has to be a public-private partnership, because we have to have healthcare, social services, and healthcare. And the public also has to be balanced. I got to give some LOV salutations to those who pick up the garbage every week. Those are part of public works. Public works is necessary, and of course we got to rebuild and mass rebuild the infrastructure of the North American collective civilizational complex. We have to rebuild the infrastructure of the North American civilizational complex. We have to rebuild the infrastructure. There must be a rebuilding, a mass building. So right now I'm going to send some LOV to those who every week I got 3 services in my neighborhood, picking up of the compost, picking up of the garbage, picking up of the recycling. So I got to be meditating and sending some rock and roll for the public workers, because rock and roll is one of my special concentrated interests, and I always rock and roll for the workers, for the butchers, for the farmers, for those bakers. Gotta give me some bacon with some loving. Gotta give me some drink conductors. Gotta chewing with the metal. Got some love and some kisses. Gotta shake it on left and right on the kisses. For the north and for the south, for the banging, for the flag to merge up in with the stars and the maple leaf. We got that maple syrup, that's the go. We got the mountains on the go. We got the snow up in the road. We got the sunshine, that California. We got to love some firefighters. You know that. I sing it for the butchers, for the train conductors, for the nurses and the doctors. Hey, for those construction workers on the planes, those electricians and the plumbers. Got to plumb it up. Electricians, that's what's up. I ain't got no money for the guitar, but I sing in a cappella, that's a scar. I deliver plenty of scars. Got the North Americans, you know, we see. For the you and me and you. For the left or right or center. Gotta give it for another. For the LOV. You know that you swing and swing those hips to the right and to the this, to the like the hawk you kiss, like the HAWK on the mountain that you see. That's the rock and roll from this aspie. You know that I play nasty. I don't mind the kisses and those toes, those stickers on the fold. On the toe they got the train, choo-choo on the planes up in the sky. You know that right. Right another melody. I don't know what you see, but you see that blue sky. For the sunshines, that's a sight. I rock and roll 24/7 rock and roll for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the grocery store clerks. And I want to gonna send some LOV now to all those involved in the production and the distribution of food. It's always necessary, of course, to be mindful that food security starts with the food producers. The food producer, myself having an experience, of course, in urban farming, is something that I enjoyed. Urban farming, I did it like 3 times here on small lots, but nonetheless, I could say that I farmed in past years before COVID, like 2018, 2019, 2020, even during COVID maybe once. But of course, it's something that I did, and I always be meditating also about what's happening with the farms and what are the farming producers, the potatoes, the wheat, the barley, the all the production that is going on, of course, across the North American collective, or what I call as a philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical analyst, and theorist, the great North American civilizational complex, the great North American civilizational complex, the great North American civilizational collective. We constitute a collective civilizational complex that is not totally divorced, but we are distinct from Western civilization. So we have certain distinctions from Western civilizations, and we're not divorced from Western civilization, but we are distinct. So we have certain distinctions, and whatever the case may be, but we are not totally divorced. So those are the things which you got to remember when I'm discussing about the North American civilizational complex, as a philosopher, as an artist, as a philosopher artist, and of course as somebody who's 24/7 on that rock and roll for the farmers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the grocery store clerks, and all involved in the production, distribution of food on this Sunday, encouraging you all to work out, train, exercise. And now I'm going to focus on geopolitics. So leave the baggage at the door. Leave the baggage at the door. You're so inclined to leave the baggage at the door. We're going to discuss geopolitics for the next half hour or so. Just focus on geopolitics, because that is my kingdom, my realm, my domain, parallel with sports and fitness, parallel with dancing and rock and roll. That's my trinity as an artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical analyst, and theorist, and what I've been working in the past 7 years. So first and foremost, going to commence with my work of geopolitical work dating from October, November 2019. So in October, November 2019, I'm going back in time a little bit. So I'm marking 5 years now, marking 5 years since I predicted an international conflagration based on different levels of analysis of geopolitics, as I analyze geopolitical events on the daily, because geopolitics is part of course, events in the geopolitical arena, geopolitical realm happen daily, and daily new events and developments, whether in economics, in new alliances being formed, are occurring on the daily basis. So it's always changing, fluctuating with new events, and sometimes those events reverberate from the 20th century. So back in 2019, and this is super important, regardless, again, leave the baggage at the door. So now I'm discussing geopolitics. So any questions, related comments have to be just about geopolitics, Leave the personal issues, personal side, all that personal stuff. It's not personal for anybody, anything. It's geopolitics. This is my kingdom, my realm. It's my special interest. As somebody who lives with Asperger's, with HFA, we have special interests, and my special interests are geopolitics, sports, fitness, dancing basically, rock and roll. So that's my holy trinity, and it's 24/7. I work, and I'm involved in working in geopolitics. So again, in 2019, October, November, I predicted an international conflagration. I predicted in World War III in 2019 based on several levels of analysis, but fundamentally the main level of analysis was that due to the fact that many nation states have not, of course, fully resolved their problems or their conflicts dating from the 20th century. So from the 20th century, during the time of the Cold War, I predicted that there's going to be a retake, there's going to be re-intensification, there's going to be a re-intensification of these conflicts, and they're going to start again because they're not being fully resolved from that. So now just focusing on the geopolitical arena. So that's what's happening across the world. The Russia-Ukraine crises, war, however you want to use the terminology, or you're going to use the geopolitical tragedy, because it's, in many cases, it's a geopolitical tragedy. But as much as I can say, and whatever I see from the news and whatever reports are given, I'm not on the ground. I'm on the ground and have been for many years here on the island metropolis of Montreal. I know I march for many years to the mountain, Mount Royal, to the Belvedere, and I know the landscape and the geopolitical realities as a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, who's my home here, home Montreal, and I want to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple on the Canadian-U.S. border, and the House of the Dragon Scarlet Red, and I want to build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum. That's me as a North American, Canadian, Quebecer, and I can be for world peace and international, but my experiences relate to here. As much as I studied and learned every day for many years, tens of thousands of pages and tens and hundreds of books on politics, history, and geopolitics, and documentaries, and study for more than 7 years. As much as my experiences relate to here, to as a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, I can only pronounce myself from such a point of view and from such an experience. As much as from education, I know the philosophies, the ideologies, and I predicted an international conflagration. At the end of the day, my initiatives, protocols, and call are for the North American civilizational complex, for the North American civilizational complex, or the North American complex of civilization, because we are an emergent new civilization in North America, right? We're not divorced but distinct from Western civilization. So Back in 2019, I predicted an international conflagration based on the common denominator and a very important factor, because I stated that many conflicts which were not resolved fully from the 20th century, they're going to restart in the 21st century. So in the Russia-Ukraine situation and crisis and conflict, it's a conflict which was not resolved in the 20th century. It dates back from the fall of the Soviet Union, from the Cold War. The Cold War lasted more than 44 years, almost 45, more than 44 years, almost 45 years. The Cold War lasted from 1947 till 1991, so almost 45 years, more than 44 years, 44 years and 9 months officially, which is, there's some disputes, but that is about the length of the duration of the Cold War. So those conflicts date from then. Israel and Palestine, Israel, Hamas, Israel, and the Middle East. As much as I know the ideologies and I know the histories and I know the treaties and the accords and the dynamics. I never lived there. So I can only pronounce myself as a North American, as a Quebecer Canadian North American. And yes, somebody who has advocated for world peace, but who also paradoxically foresaw an international conflagration, a rearmament, and a World War III on the horizon back in 2019. And again, their conflict there, it's a conflicts and wars and strife which also date from the 20th century, and they restarted in the 21st century, the Russia-Ukraine, and potentially on the horizon, China and Taiwan, the island of Taiwan, there is known as the Republic of China, while mainland China, their conflicts go from the 20th century also, and to the time of Mao Zedong establishing the People's Republic of China in October 1st, I believe, 1949. In October 1949, officially the establishment of the People's Republic of China, and I say that yours truly, from the Mountain Mount Royal, establishes and credit the creditation for the establishment of the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom. Is fundamentally a North American union, public-private partnership-based union to create a common currency, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which I laid the foundation first and foremost with 718 trillions of kisses, kisses I got first, some rock and roll, some marching steps, and lots of dancing with it. So that's fundamentally what I call for the establishment thereof. And my brothers and sisters, fellow Canadians, the king is absent. We got to take that into consideration, and it's time for the Republic. The king is absent. We got to make that North American integration. And now what concerns us the most is the coming Trump administration and the threat of 25% tariffs. That's number one. So first and foremost, my fellow Quebecers, Canadians, leave the baggage at the door. The main and fundamental reality is our geopolitical reality is that we got to the east, we got the Atlantic, and to the west, we got the Pacific. And the best relationship and our common interest and the most important interest for us is to have good and the best and the most brother, little brother, big brother, little brother, big sister, little sister, like a family relation. Sometimes we're dysfunctional and we push each other, and we lay a brick or two and we slip and slide, and we, whatever the case may be, we agree to disagree. And some of us are rainbow like myself, some are straight, some are whatever the case may be. Some say God, some say goddess. I say both, God goddess, where the goddess at, G-O-D-D-S-S, but at the end of the day, we got to do ourselves to work together. And our main interest, regardless of anything else, from a strictly geopolitical perspective, geopolitical reality, is that we are Quebecers, Canadians, North Americans. We're North Americans, and our main interest is to have the best relation with the United States as possible. So that is our main interest, so that we avoid conflict, and war, and we channel in a sportsmanlike manner. Because I've been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-U.S. border, and as much as I do disagree with many of the policies of Donald Trump, and I disagree with Donald Trump, at the end of the day, we're going to have to work together. And of course, I got to salute, because I heard some things we've got to pay attention in geopolitical discourse, that of course we have our interest to have the best relations with our brothers and sisters in the United States of America. That's it. That's all, rock and roll. So that has to be number one, regardless of what everything else from a geopolitical reality. we have two oceans to the east and to the west, and that always makes me go back to 2017. That was a major event in my life. Prior to that event, I was depressed, I was suicidal, and in 2017 I crossed Canada coast to coast. I crossed Canada coast to coast. I crossed Canada coast to coast. So I went to Vancouver, BC. I went to Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, of course in August, and then of course I went to the east by train, 25 hours and 44 minutes to the east by train, 25 hours and 44 minutes, and going to Halifax, British Columbia in September 2017. So 17 years ago. And of course, I moved here about more than 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe, don't know exactly when, from a very moldy place. I was sick and diseased, I was sick, ill, suicidal. And after crossing Canada, that event in my life, crossing Canada coast to coast, made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. And back then I say, well, you're my family, you're my family now. So more than 7 years, my brothers and sisters in the USA also, the great North American collective family and beyond for world peace, and all who come to join us, all who come to join us, all who come to join us here in the new world. We try to be strong and free, the true north, strong and free. Yeah, but to that strong and free, we got to have some love, some love, and some understanding, and some pleasure, and some rebuilding of the infrastructure, and building more hydroelectric dams, and doing a little bit of more joy. So crossing Canada coast to coast really made me come out of being depressed and suicidal, because I had an awakening when I arrived in Banff. Wow, it was like Banff was like such an event for yours truly that I totally had a revelation. I said, wow, so many things to see, to do here in this Canada, the true north, strong and free. So I started working out. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds after that, created my own workout training program system. So back to geopolitics, we have to, the first reality, consequently, and most fundamentally important is that we have as neighbors to the south, my brothers and sisters of the USA. That's it, that's all. We have, and that's our main concern as Canadians, as Quebecer Canadians, as North Americans as well, right? As North Americans as well. That is the geopolitical reality. So there's no yes and no. That's what it is. Regardless of other things, that's geopolitical reality, is that we have as neighbors the United States, and that's our main and only concern. Primarily concern is to avoid conflict. And of course, when Donald Trump was asked on the TV, of course, if he's going to use military force for Canada, he absolutely, without hesitation, he said no, without hesitation. So that's because if he would have said yes, I would have been ready to go on the mountain and already do geopolitical strategize. And of course, I created a military defense theory called the Total Mobile Defense Theory, Total Mobile Defense Theory system, which I'm not going to elaborate because it's something for national security. And in my past, of course, correlations and work with CSIS and the RCMP, of course, in past a few years ago on several national security matters as a philosopher, thinker of national security matters. Of course, as an independent one, I created what's called the Total Mobile Defense Theory, which I'm not going to consequently discuss and converge and discuss. It's matters, of course, to discuss with the security apparatus and the armed forces and the security forces of both Canada and the US and Quebec. And of course, the TM, the Total Mobile Defense Theory, is something which we got to implement on part of Operation Northern Scorpio that I'm calling for as a citizen independent, financially struggling, but joyous, and Rainbow Dragon, pro-labor and love revolutionary centrist, ASPE, geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, who has suffered struggle due to the Asperger's condition known as HFA, high functioning autism. And sometimes you got to learn what the condition is, and we can seem very rude sometimes, very direct or very abrasive, or have weird symptoms and weird kind of bodily dynamics, and can repeat things, have a symptom. I'm not calling them symptoms because it's more characteristic. Symptoms would be something that's more for an illness. A symptom is more for an illness, while Asperger's is a neurodivergent mental condition, is not a mental illness. It is just a neurodivergent. It makes us predisposed to special interests, special focus interests, and we can be very intense and very focused when we focus on certain things and certain matters which are, of course, of our special interest, such as myself, of course, geopolitics. The analysis of geopolitics 24/7 for yours truly is what's, of course, consequently happening on the daily basis with yours, with myself, geopolitical analysis. So back to geopolitics between the North American collective, we fundamentally, the main geopolitical interest of Canada is to have the best, friendliest, most economic developed, most security developed relations with the United States. That's the number one. Due to the geographical realities, we have two oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific. We're a new country just like the United States. We're new just like the United States. And together, Canada, United States, and Mexico, because Mexico is part of North America, and the islands, they're also part of what I call the collective North American civilizational complex, or the greater North American civilizational complex, meaning that it's a complex, a new civilization. It's kind of a new civilizational complex, or a complex of civilization which is not divorced but is distinct from Western civilization. So we're not divorced from Western civilization, but we're distinct. So we have distinctive characteristics, geography and geographical realities, which of course are distinct from Western civilization. So of course, right here, the winter, of course, some people in Montreal, Quebec, Canada are not that prone to like the winter. I don't mind winter. I actually do not mind winter and snow. I go, even the other day, I went Friday on the mountain, Mount Royal, at the top of the Belvedere, and some people came, but I see as the temperature decreases, from in the autumn, there's less and less people. And now when I went in end of December, beginning of January, atop the mountain, Mount Royal, my second home, Mount Royal, Belvedere, Conjurac, is a few miles from my place here in NDG, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Montreal. But I go there marching around the bottom and do geopolitical analysis and theory and revision of my total mobile defense theory. And of course, always meditate and strategize for the North American collective. And we're going to play that defense. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're going to have to play that defense. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, we're going to have to play that defense. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. So, of course, when Donald Trump was asked whether he will use military force for Canada, he said no economic force. But my brothers and sisters, we cannot just use force. You got to have some LOV. And he said he loved Canadians. He loves Canadians, love Canadians. Well, I love my American brothers and sisters also. If there would be an invasion, I would be, of course, the first one to go jump and try to give some help. I would have loved to have the Dragon Army for security service on the ground to be able to go help in the California wildfires, LOV firefighters, finance them, BNS finance them, some massage therapy sessions. It's not all about the money, Wall Street. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the money, and you know it. Sometimes we got to have some LOV. It's not all about fight. If somebody is not going to make love today, this Sunday, 12th of January, what are we fighting to save civilization for? What are we fighting to save civilization for? Hopefully somebody's making some LOV today. Hopefully the youth will dance today. Dancing is my favorite sport, and I can dance for hours on any type of music. I love dancing. Adrian Hanna Dragon, dancing is my favorite sport, and dancing is my favorite fitness activity. Parallel with that, geopolitics and rock and roll. Geopolitics, again, once and for all, the most important thing for us Canadians, Quebecers like myself, is to have the best, most cordial, business-friendly relations with my brothers and sisters in the United States. That's the number one. All the other realities aside, the geopolitical reality of geopolitics one-on-one, the fundamental most important aspect for our geopolitics as Canadians, Quebecers, is to have the best, most friendly, most cordial, and business-friendly relations with the United States. And here we made the great linguistic compromise of North America as a philosopher, what I call the great North American linguistic compromise with the French language. You see, that's like the Quebec flag there. The Quebec flag, the fleur de lis. See the fleur de lis? That's the Quebec flag. It still got blue and white in it. We can integrate. We can put the stars, the fleur de lis, and the maple leaf together. We can put the stars, the maple leaf, and the fleur de lis together. We can put them together, the maple leaf, the stars, and the fleur de lis. And we got that Mexico there. That's the Mexican flag. There's a snake. I love snakes. And there's I guess an eagle. I was going to say hawk, because HAWK, hawk. Here we got hawks atop the mountain in Mount Royal. We got hawks. So hawk is my totem bird, The hawk is my totem bird, although I love snakes, and I call him for the implementation of Operation Northern Scorpio, because we got a Scorpio, which comes all the way to here, the north. One Scorpio species which comes all the way here for the north. So keeping that in mind, keeping that in consideration, that our most important fundamental in geopolitics as Quebecer Canadians is to have the best relations with the USA. Because in the north we got the Arctic. Yeah, there's Russia in Alaska, but it's in the Arctic. It's in the Arctic. So that's only some security protocols concerns, because otherwise we got 2 oceans. So that is what must be understood by all the politicians, all dealing with the current situation, regardless of 100,000 words and sophisticated philosophical verbose language. And I can do, because I do, due to Asperger's, I tend to be overly scholarly and academic and intellectual, philosophical, and a bit more complex in my dynamics of geopolitical analysis. And sometimes I try to simplify it as much as possible, so I try to illuminate and be less confusing and be as simple as I can. In geopolitics, the straightforward and direct, perhaps rude awakening is that our geopolitical reality as Quebecers, Canadians, myself included, got Canada tatted there, Canada, and I'm a Canadian, Quebecer, North American. I can be international and a world citizen as much as I can. My experiences relate to Montreal, Canada, my life, my life. I'm a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, and I believe in reincarnations. And sometimes I was born a woman, as a Quebec woman, as a Quebec man, Quebecer man. I met Louis here in a past life. And in previous incarnations, I was born in the United States, 3 times post 70-76, served in the United States Army, 2 different wars. Once I was born a woman. And George Patton, read George Patton's poetry, one of my favorite poems, which of course stipulates the belief in reincarnations, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton was a U.S. general, and of course Through a Glass Darkly is one of his poems, which he states the belief. He believed in reincarnations, but he didn't mention there that he was also born a woman. But I know for a fact is about 2,600 years ago, he was my wife in a past life. George Patton was my wife in a past life. George Patton was my wife in a past life, and maybe I was his wife in a vice versa, 50-50. But that aside, my belief in reincarnation aside, today, the 12th of January 2024, tonight, my brother's cousin, I call him Cousin Justin Trudeau, and at the end of the day, I gotta send some LOV Justin Trudeau. 9+ years he ruled. Tough times. As much as we're eager to jump and criticize, and which we're eager to jump and criticize, as much at the end of the day, I would defend Trudeau. If there would be an invasion, I'll be the first one to go join up. If there will be an invasion, but only for defense, and only with the consensus and the understanding that never ever will I ever be deployed outside of the sphere of the North American collective, ever be deployed to go to fight in any foreign wars outside of Quebec, Canada, North America. If NATO troops, we got plenty of lands, I got plenty of ideas, and consequently my total mobile defense theory, we can build here and invest in the military so that NATO armed forces can come train on the Canadian realm. We can build actually parallel. We can build Canada with the United States, join my protocols for the Operation Northern Scorpio to build centers across Canada based on my total mobile training system, which can train the armed forces of the NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization complex, NATO complex. We can train them here on the Canadian realm, and they can come do 5-hour marches around Montreal, Mount Royal, 5-hour marches, maybe with a little bit of interjections and stop and eat some whatever poutine and drink some Quebec wine, eat some Quebec wine and learn a little bit of French. My brothers and sisters, I know my brothers and sisters in the USA for the great linguistic compromise which we made here in Quebec, La Belle Province, for the French language. I don't mind. I know that the United States Armed Forces, and once a week, not going to mind, of course, once a week or even once a day, who we were fighting for, 10 million Quebecers, to listen to a French song by Celine Dion, and read the translation out loud. Read the translation of that Celine Dion French Quebecer song. Read the translation aloud. I know it's not too much to ask. What I'm asking is, of course, I am financially stressed, $10,000 in debt. I'm also asking for public-private partnership, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, and my will to build. If I will to build something is the Forgotten Goddess Temple, Forgotten Goddess Temple, Forgotten Goddess GODDSS Temple, because I credit my surviving COVID, surviving being attacked by surprise a few years ago when I fell, hit my head, and had a dislocated right arm, and went to the Jewish general. I was given some medication. I was like kind of in a coma for a few days at home, and my memory blacks out. After that, I got retrograde amnesia. I just remember the past years just moving here, and I got like kind of blackouts of my memory of early childhood, early high school, early adult life. So I mostly remember the past like 7 + 8 years, and kind of like that. And I remember mostly anyways. That aside, the most important thing is geopolitics. Forget the personal stuff, who I am as a person. Just focus on these principles. principles. Yes, I'm not without flaws, without vices. I suffered, I struggled, I have plenty of scars. I live trauma, but I'm joyous now. I'm joyous when I go to the mountain, and if you're a pledge your allegiance, I do not want to will to waste anybody's time. Friends with benefits only. I do not will to waste anybody's time. Friends with benefits only. I have no will to waste anybody's time. Friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits only. Pledge your allegiance, and black, white, and rainbow. I'm pansexual, androgynous, so LOV, and I'm not looking because I'm not looking for specifics in the more romantic sexual realm. I'm joyous, but friends with benefits, and play black, white, and rainbow. I'm androgynous, pansexual, so I LOV that homosexual. So that's always LOV with that, my fellow homosexuals. So that aside, and geopolitics is my realm, my kingdom, my domain. The most important things, and of course the LGBTQ community of my fellow North Americans. So I would defend Trudeau. I got his back. What do you want me to say? I got Trudeau's back as much as I can. I can argue and throw. Sure, I might disagree with him, and I say, my brother Trudeau cousin, why didn't you go meet the truckers, go outside, talk to them, try to say, well, try to get a vaccine is not so bad, and this and that, and try to regulate in a friendly manner, whatever. All that disagreements aside, at the end of the day, I have to also have, in terms of a worst case emergency scenario, I have to have my cousins back. At the end of the day, I got some love for Trudeau. It was tough times, tough times. I mean, to all the things that he had to deal with, COVID and the geopolitical reality of a war arising. I foresaw it in 2019. I predicted it because that's what I did, and I do for years and years and years. Every day, study, revisions of geopolitics, geopolitical events, revising geopolitical events, going back in the 20th century, coming back in the 21st century, today for tomorrow, and predicting for tomorrow. That's what I am, an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and philosopher. A bit weird and with Asperger's, HFA, live with high functioning autism, with scars on the body, and a little bit financially stressed, but nonetheless, geopolitics, you can discuss whatever subject you want, put it on the table, but at the end of the day, the matter is, and the most important thing, that from Justin Trudeau, and the king is absent. It's time for the Republic. It's time for the Canadian Republican Army, the North American Security and Service and Defense Force. Defense only. We're going to have to play that defense only. Dragon Army protocols. My initiative for the Dragon Army is only strictly foremost for defensive purposes. Defense, security, service. Defense, security, and service. Those principles, based on those principles, that is my Dragon Army initiative for what I call the Great North American Collective, the North American Collective Civilizational Complex. And here in Quebec, 10 million Quebecers, we made the Great Linguistic Compromise. We have to make Bon Cop, Bad Cop 3. The third, we already have 2. We have to make the third part and include the United States in it. The United States were included in the second one, and we got to include the United States in it. Of course, it interplays. It's one of my favorite movies, and I want to play a little role in it. And I want to play kind of like a little bit of dancer androgynous, and they're arguing if I'm a man or I'm a woman, and I'm a man or I'm a woman. And then at one point he said, he's both, and they finally agree, he's both, he's 50-50, whatever the case may be. Whatever we agree to disagree on certain things, the reality is that as Quebec Canadians, in geopolitics, the United States is our main geopolitical, not concern, but our main geopolitical ally, our main geopolitical friend. Our main concern, or we say concern, or interest, is for us Quebecers, Canadians, to have the best, most cordial, friendly relations on all fields, from sports, from culture, from entertainment, from business, with the United States, from military, from security, defense, and we gotta have that liberty, gotta be secured. It's to have cordial, the best relations with the United States. From geopolitics, it's not the same as in Europe. They have the European Union, many nation states, many languages. Here in my underground room of St. Temple, I learned Spanish in the past 7+ years. I can manage in Spanish. I make an effort. I also have to, as a defender of the French language, we also have to make it as individuals. Because myself, I gotta encourage people to speak French. Also, if they're gonna encourage, how we're gonna encourage? Because, we made it so far. Without having a conflict, an internal conflict with the Quebecois nation, of which I'm now part of and have been part from the Quebecois nation for many decades. And I am myself a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, North American, Canadian, Quebecer, Canadian, Quebecer, North American. I believe in North American Union. As much as I am for world peace, as a world citizen, fundamentally, I am a North American. As much as I can relate from what I know when I study from Europe, the European Union, I know the ideologies, the philosophies, I always can learn some more, but fundamentally, the European Union, they have different interests. France, England, Spain, of course, whatever the case may be, all the nations, and Austria, and of course Czechoslovakia, and Croatia, and Romania, and Bulgaria, and Poland, and of course the conflict in the Ukraine and Russia, and the Middle East also. There are several nation states. So it's in Africa also. They have different organizations. The new BRICS just expanded. The new BRICS just included Indonesia. Our fundamental, most important, as much as we're part of the Commonwealth, and it's time for the Republic, the King is absent. It's time for the Republic, the King is absent. It is time for the Republic. The King is absent, and as much as you can criticize Trudeau, but he had to be in his shoes. How tough it was. I can only imagine how pressure it was to be Prime Minister during COVID, in these tough times. We have to find solutions. 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 And solutions got to be the focus. Our main interest, regardless of other things, we got two oceans, the Atlantic to the east, the Pacific to the west, is to have the best relations with my brothers and sisters in the USA. That's it. That's all rock and roll. That's it. That's all rock and roll. So in that sense, there's no really arguing with that. There's no really arguing with that, because that's the reality. That's the geopolitical reality. That's the geographical reality, which entails a geopolitical reality, because we don't have any other nation states and political entities, neither to the east, where you find the Atlantic, neither to the west, where you find the Pacific. Sure, up north in the Arctic, you have potentially in China and Russia going in the Arctic, Chinese warships or Chinese ships and Russian ships in the Arctic. But fundamentally, besides that, that's the fundamental geopolitical point. That's an important point, because that's a reality of the North American complex. As Quebecer Canadians, our main interest is to have the best relations with the United States. And sure, as much as I disagree and have been challenging and am challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match since 2018, and thank you, anonymous friend, who gifted me those red gloves, which I'm auctioning for a mint to give my anonymous friend 50% half. I've been using them a lot, still going to use them intensely this coming week just before the inauguration, as I go to the public gym around the mountain. But fundamentally, I started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border in 2018, and that's when I kind of entered politics. Mostly I was on the sidelines of politics. I was an independent. I was just coming out of being depressed, being suicidal, and moving here and healing, and created my workout training program system, which is efficient, simple, and effective. It does not require any equipment whatsoever. I created it paradoxically to go hand in hand with a World War III scenario back in 2019, officially titled the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Dragon Army Workout, of which I performed myself more than 300 sessions. And I encourage you all to work out, train, exercise, and I have been and will continue to mass call for the public-private partnership, to mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise. Working out, training, exercising has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice for me, and it is for many, of course, it is for many. So working out, training, and exercising has been, is, and will continue to be my medicine and therapy of choice. So that's what it is today. The geopolitical reality is that in 8 days, Donald Trump will be inaugurated as President of the United States, afternoon on 20th of January. Tomorrow is the full moon, so today's kind of a pre-full moon special. Tomorrow I'm going to be cleaning, so I'm auctioning everything that I have here that I own for 50%. 50%, I'm auctioning 93% to give 50% to my anonymous friend, and to start laying the first bricks on the Canadian-US border for the Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS temple. That's my will to build, a forgotten goddess temple with special consecrations and rituals, and a special device, of course, whatever the case may be, and the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, and the House of the Dragon, scarlet, crimson, red. Red is the shade of scarlet, and crimson are shades of red, basically. And the fourth one, I will to build the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow LGBTQ community, the Rainbow People's Palace. That's what I will to build, my will. Well, primarily the Forgotten Goddess Temple, bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey. Gotta sing some song for the firefighters. LOV to the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the firefighters, those truckers on the road, and those on the trains, going with some of those grains, some wheat and some barley, all the way north and south. Canada, you know, loud, true north, strong and free, but you know you gotta have some loving in me. Hey, true north, strong and free, but you know you gotta get some loving on me. True north, strong and free, but you know you gotta get some loving up in me. So you know you have to have some LOV. There has to be some LOV. It can't be just strength and fitness. Has to be some understanding, which cannot, as much as I do understand the doctrine, the ideology, peace through strength. Peace through strength, I understand it. I understand it. Peace through strength. Some of my initiatives, Operation Northern Scorpio, and the North American Hawk Defense Initiative, the North American Hawk Defense Initiative, are kind of, sort of, mainly 50-50 based on peace through strength. But the Dragon Army Initiative has to be complemented by the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, the call for the North American Integrated Dance League, a public-private partnership to dance for pleasure, purpose, and environmental cleaning. And the Dragon Army public-private partnership to be responsive to be responsive during emergencies, or for defense security service to integrate based on my philosophies, which I started writing about 6 or 7 years ago. Started writing the new North American 911 protocols for the integration of the citizenry in case of an emergency, the new 911 protocols for the integration of citizenry in case of emergency, the new 911 North American protocols for the integration of citizenry in case of an emergency. And we need to rebuild the infrastructure, of the North American collective. There's a lots of work to do, and I gotta salute, of course, those on the roads, the truckers and the butchers and the bakers and those who fill the potholes. And I gotta give a salutation to the Hydro-Quebec workers of the past. We built so many dams here. We need to build some more hydroelectric dams. We build some more. We're gonna need to build some more. And of course, our electricity, which myself I'm using now, comes from clean, zero pollution energy. Of course, which Hydro-Quebec workers have worked in the 20th century, which I gotta salute, send some LOV, rock and roll. And of course, to build more dams, and our electricity goes all the way from Hydro-Quebec, goes of course all to 5666 states, and 1/20th, 1/5 of our electricity goes all the way, of course, to the North American complex, goes to New York, to Manhattan. 1/20th goes all the way to New York to Manhattan. 1/20th goes all the way to Manhattan, New York. That's 1/20th. That's what it goes. 1/20th goes to New York to Manhattan. That's 1/5 of our electricity goes to New York and Manhattan. So we got to keep that in mind. I got to give some salutations, and we need to build some more, and we need to create a common currency. I'm now going to discuss geopolitics again, a revision. So first, the most important thing is that we must focus on our politicians, our leaders of Quebec, Canada, got to know, consequently, without any hesitation, that our geopolitical main top fundamental geopolitical interest is to have the best cordial maintenance of good harmonious relationship with the United States, and furthermore integration as much as possible, but it has to be public-private partnership, because we have to have a healthcare system, right? A public healthcare and public services. Thank you to those public services who pick up the recycling, pick up the garbage, pick up the compost. Thank you. That's what it is. We got to have that compromise and that compromise balance. And those are the fundamentals. As much as consequently anything else on the side, that's the main fundamental principle that my cousin Justin Trudeau, my uncle Legault, I'm not a CAC member. I say my uncle because I consider Quebecer Canadians and North Americans family, the great North American family, because we got each other at the end of the day. And consequently, all ALL who come to join us in the great North American collective. But we need to make a census. We need to make a census of all citizens who are in Quebec, Canada, North America, and who have been here living in the past 7 years, So we need to integrate citizenry and make a great census. Maybe we can mobilize Canada Post to do a census, and help in the census. With the census, we can get some directed, and that's to Justin Trudeau, and of course my protocols and invitation for the great collaboration for the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally for the North American Democratic Republic. Myself, a Democratic Republican, a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist. My universal revolutionary centrism is tied hand in hand with my trinity of theories, to which I'm calling for the implementation: the CIT, citizen integration theory; the DRT, debt fusion theory; and the democratic fusion theory, the DFT, the democratic fusion theory, to be integrated via the fourth dimension, LOVE. Because otherwise, we can't just have strength and freedom. We have to have some LOV. Otherwise, of course, consequently, we have to have that to counterbalance As much as I understand peace through strength, we cannot base all our values just on strength. We have to have some fundamental complementary, cooperative, complementary contributions and forces. There has to be some love and understanding to strength, right? Some love and understanding in our dynamics of our individual, myself as an individual, with my own individual Asperger's, being on the spectrum of autism, HFA, high functioning autism, and my problems and my obstacles which I've encountered to having a regular job for more than a few months, a few weeks. And that's something which people with Asperger's are misunderstood, and often, of course, there's a stigma and label, but it has some strengths. Asperger's and geopolitics is my kingdom, my realm. Fundamentally, my uncle Legault, my cousin Justin Trudeau, it has to be understood by all leaders that fundamentally, regardless of everything else, but our more main concern is to have the best, cordial, most important relations with the USA. With the USA, for the of everything else, regardless of everything other geopolitical events, geopolitical considerations, geopolitical realities. Our reality as Quebecers, Canadians, first and fundamentally, is that we must have the best, most cordial relations with my brothers and sisters in the USA. That's it. That's all rock and roll. That's just how the geopolitical reality is, regardless of everything else. So, in fact, we got two oceans, the east and the west, the Atlantic and the Pacific, and we got a common manifest destiny. We have a common manifest destiny. That is that we are a new, fundamentally emergent civilizational complex. We're an emergent civilizational complex, the North American civilizational complex, and we have common manifest destiny, the integration of our infrastructure, the integration across all levels of the North American complex via fundamentally public-private partnership. And the billionaires, millionaires, they have to give some charity. Please give 10% ASAP. Please give 10% ASAP. 10% ASAP. Please, NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball, so MLB. Give a lot to the reconstruction and reduce the ticket cost by 44.9%. Reduce the tickets of the cost of the tickets by 44.9%. NFL, National Football League, NHL, National Hockey League, NBA, National Basketball Association, MLB. Reduce the cost of the tickets by 44.9%. That is this independent aspie artist, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical, analyst, and theorist, and mystic call for the reduction of the tickets cost, of course, to be reduced by that much, 44.9%. That is my call, of course, to be implemented as I am here on the Highland of Montreal, Hawk Island, Montreal. North Americans Unite is the call. We're now going to discuss the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory. The debt refusion theory stands for D, for debt, R, refusion theory. So fundamentally, of course, again, just to reiterate of my cousin Justin Trudeau, that, as much as we criticize, you got to criticize, propose some course of action, as I'm proposing the course of action in a public-private partnership base. The DRT, debt refusion theory, my brothers and sisters, is the only solution. The DRT, debt refusion theory, is the only solution. The DRT, debt refusion theory, is the only solution. So D, debt, R, refusion, T, theory. The debt refusion theory is the only solution, as of course we call for the implementation. And why do I make the statement that my DRT theory, debt refusion theory, is the only solution? Is to the fact that today we pay on the public debt. We paid in 2024 46.5 billion in interest. 46.5 billion in interest. That is just the amount of interest paid on the public debt. 46.5 billion. In 2020, 2021, the number was 20.3 billion. 20.3 billion double would have been 40.6. So 20.3 times 2 would have been 40.6. Now, 3 years later, of course, it's 46.5 billion. So 46.5 billion, that's a billion has 9 zeros. A billion has 9 zeros. A billion has 9 zeros. 1 billion is 1,000 million. So imagine that is just debt servicing. In other words, paying interest has more than doubled in 3 years. And of course, due to COVID, of course, the initiation of several protocols, of course, to supplement the population during the health emergency. That is the motive why paying the interest has doubled. So from 20.3 has went to 46.5 billion. So the only solution is the DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, So we're going to have to take all the public and the private debt, my debt of $10,000, my debt of $10,000. I got $10,000 in debt to the Royal Bank of Canada. So all the debt, public and private, all the debt, public and private, all the debt, public and private, we're going to add it all together, and I'll add it all together. All that we're going to convert it into US dollars. All that we're going to convert it into US dollars. So all the public and the private debt, again, this is the only solution. This is the only solution which we got to do, only solution which we got to do. There's no other solution but the debt refusion theory for the creation of the U, the universal exchange in it. That is the only solution. You can argue all you want, but that's only solution due to the fact that we now today had to pay in 2024 the interest on the debt of 46.5 billion. A billion is 1,000 million, has 9 zeros, so that's 46,000. You can check with Tiff Mackler, the Bank of Canada, the numbers. It's 46.5 billion in interest which we gotta pay. 46.5 billion in interest. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt, including my $10,000 to the Royal Bank of Canada, all the debt, public and private debt, all the debt, public and private debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're gonna take all the public debt, public and private debt. So there's no solution. You can argue all you want. My DRT theory, paradoxically, is the only solution for where we are now, to pay the fact that on the public debt of Canada we pay 46.5 billion in interest. And as much as I don't like to be too much of an alarmist, but there's a possibility of a black swan event. There's a possibility of a black swan event. There's a possibility of a black swan event, a worst case scenario, financial worst case scenario that is of course possible to arise. So that's taken into consideration, that taken aside into consideration, all that aside, of course, is the fact that we pay 46.5 billion in interest, 46.5 billion in interest, 46.5 billion in interest, just the interest. So the DRT stands for debt refusion theory, is the only solution. You can check the numbers that I'm just stating now with the Bank of Canada, Tiff Mackler. The interest, just the interest on the public debt of Canada has more than doubled. It from 2020 2021, it was 20.3 billion. 20.3 billion is 20,000. Now it's 46.5 billion. 46.5 billion. So that's the only solution. There's no other solution but my DRT theory, which includes monetary integration theory. So my DRT theory, debt refusion theory, includes monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is exactly what was done in the European Union. What was done in the European Union. What was done in the European Union. So the Europeans, they destroyed in the 90s, the Germans, their all central national banks, their national central banks. Their national central banks, the Germans, the French, the Italian, many countries destroyed their all central banks, and they annulled their own currency. So they implemented monetary integration theory by the creation of the euro and the ECB, the European Central Bank, and by the establishment of the European Central Bank, they issued a common currency known as the euro. So my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory, includes monetary integration theory, includes monetary integration theory, includes monetary integration theory, includes monetary integration theory. So that is the solution. Because imagine yourself as an individual. Let's say myself, I pay 11% interest on my, I don't have credit cards, I do not have credit cards. I have a credit line for more than 7 years ago, which I have it, a credit line. So I pay less interest than credit cards. Like some credit cards are 20%, 22%, 25%, 25.44%, more than 20%. So I pay about 11%. It went up a bit because it used to be 9.3, but it went up in the past 3.5 years due to the Bank of Canada increasing the prime rate. There's the increase due to COVID measures. Anyways, so imagine that you would have, or I would have, or somebody else, another citizen, consumer would have credit cards, and in 2021 he paid $156 in interest. Just the interest would have paid $156. So I'm making a parallel to what's been happening with the public finances of Canada in a private individual citizen manner. So imagine on the credit cards you would have paid $156, and now 3 years later, from 156 it would have been to 333. From 156 it would have been to 333. It would have been from 156 to 333, and it would have been 156 to 333. So that would have been more than double, while salaries would have not doubled, most salaries have only increased by 5%, 10%, or 15%. So the fact that most salaries have stagnated, only there have been more strikes, so some have increased by 5%, 10%, maybe 15%. But the fact is that the public servicing, the interest on the public debt of Canada has more than doubled in 3 years. So imagine, as an individual citizen, your interest that you pay, just the interest, not the principal on the debt, would have more than doubled from 156 to 333, from 156 to 333, from 156 to 333. That means that you would have to cut whatever service, cut maybe Videotron, cut maybe Bell, cut maybe your internet, cut the coffee, cut the bacon. You would have to reduce the expenses because your salary, right? It's just economics, mathematics. You would have had to cut the expenses, reduce 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 the expenses. So you would have to cut the expenses, whatever the case may be. You would have had to cut the expenses. You would have had to cut the expenses. Cut somewhere, whether the cell phone service, internet service. That's just because your salary would have not increased would have not doubled in 3 years. Most salaries have not doubled. So if your debt servicing, the interest that you pay on the debt more than doubles, just like it's happened with the public finances of Canada, and it's possible that tomorrow a public financial collapse of Canada begins on the full moon. A public financial collapse of Canada begins on the full moon. It's possible that a public financial collapse of Canada begins on the full moon, and it's possible that right the morning when Donald Trump on the 20th of January gets inaugurated, that there's a public financial crash of the public finances of Canada due to how we just ended paying the interest and how the new fiscal year begins, right? The concordium thereof. It's possible that such a mess is on the horizon. So my solution is the DRT, and there's no other solution. This also applies to Canada, US, because I'm calling it to be implemented bi-national, but at the same time as soon as possible. The DRT, debt refusion, which includes monetary integration. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, including my $10,000 to the RBC, all the public-private debt, Canada, US joint, all that debt, we're going to convert the Canadian public-private debt to US dollars. We're going to bundle it together. We're going to create a new currency called the UE. All the public and the private debt is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. Is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. Is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank. So all the public and the private debt, we're going to create a new currency with it. Or we're going to create a new currency with it. So all the public and the private debt, we're going to create a new currency with it. The UE, Universal Exchange Unit, U dot, Universal E dot Exchange U dot Unit, U dot Universal E dot Exchange U dot Unit, the UE, U dot Universal E dot Exchange U dot Unit. So we're gonna create all the public and the private debt, including my $10,000 as a private citizen. We're gonna add it all up, and that money is gonna be the initial money supply for a new central bank. That's what they did in the European Union. They created a common central bank. For North America, we're going to create a new central bank, create a common currency, get rid of the border, the king is absent, and unite, of course, in an economic, military, security manner, create a common currency, standardize the prices, put a cap on interest, 10% thereafter on all loans, no more than 10% allowed, no more than 10% allowed. It can be 3.33, 1.56, 6.1, 9.3, 7.18, below 10% after we initialize this new North American financial accord, So all that money, the debt, public-private debt, will be the initial money supply. With that money, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure of North America. We're going to be building 44 tunnels inspired by the Cheyenne Mountain and the Montreal Underground Village. We have an underground village of miles and kilometers, square kilometers and square miles, underground village of Montreal. We're going to build 44 tunnels, build 44. The number after 43, before 45 is 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war, for the continuity of the North American collective civilization in case of a thermonuclear war, and prepare in case of a thermonuclear war to build 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to rebuild more hydroelectric dams, mass finance citizens to work out, train, exercise, mass finance tourism, and build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum on the Canadian-US border, build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and lay the foundations for the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, for the Dragon Army, the North American Security and Service Force, with the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army, and of course we're going to lay the foundations for that, and that's going to be the building of more defense strategies, and of course defense against ICBM rockets, potentially for the North American Hawk project, North American Skyhawk, and build more satellites and build across North American complex centers where, of course, the monitoring and surveillance, open to the public, monitoring and surveillance, and see what's going on in the construction, with the constructions of the 44 tunnels, where citizens can cooperate and integrate for the building of the 44 tunnels, and for defense and security and service, and volunteer across the great cities and across the small cities, build centers of the Dragon Army cities and integrated centers for security service and force, and of course for volunteering and rebuilding the infrastructure, rebuilding the aqueducts and the bridges. We need mass financing of the infrastructure rebuilding, because our infrastructure hasn't been rebuilt since more than 44 years. So that's the DRT. Going to be able to do great public-private partnership reinitializations of public-private partnership projects, the DRT, debt refusion theory, DRT for the creation of the UE. Paradoxically, I'm putting on the table somebody who has suffered, struggled for years and years and years. The DRT is time is now. There's no other way. Paradoxically, because of Asperger's, having suffered, struggled, and only in the past 44 plus months I've accepted, because for many years I've been diagnosed with Asperger's HFA, but I didn't want to accept it until lately. Yes, I am an ASPE in the past 44 months or so, 3.5 years since I've accepted it, and I've been working on my characteristics, and I'm not that good at social interactions. I'm mediocre, average, and so at certain things. I have really difficulty with certain things, as many aspects do, but we have special interest. And in geopolitics, that's my kingdom, my realm. It's 24/7 to study the analysis of geopolitics. When you study geopolitics, you have to know a little bit of public finances, and due to that curse can come a blessing, the DRT. And I gotta give a shout out to an anonymous friend, an anonymous acquaintance from a few years ago, anonymous acquaintance, which gifted me for the holidays, for Xmas on the 24th of December, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, a book. It was a bit on the conspiratorial side, but it had real information about the past banking financial practices of ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Sumeria, ancient India, ancient China, and the British Empire. And it was mostly concerned and dealt with the 2010 great financial crisis. And my DRT theory is partly inspired, and I started working on it back about 6-7 years ago after reading that book for about 7 times. And I wrote on the book and I had to throw it out. I had to recycle it because it was illegible. It became illegible because I read it in taking baths, bathing with it, and I read it and I studied it. And it was semi-conspiratorial. It was a bit on the conspiracy side, a bit on dealing with some underworld, also underworld conspiracy theories about the great financial crisis being caused by the underworld of Chinese underworld, the triads, and some surnames which equated to ancient Chinese triads. Underworld, the criminal underworld of China, supposedly caused the great financial crises of 2007-2010, according to the book. So no, I do not prescribe to that. I do not agree with that thesis, but I guess you got to read it for yourself, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't like that much. Sure, JFK was a conspiracy to assassinate JFK. Yeah, maybe some occult esoteric, because he was at the end of the Scorpio season, at the end of the Scorpio astrology season, but maybe like a ritual, whatever is possible. I don't know exactly for sure. Or just like 9/11. I do not believe in conspiracy theories, but I have questions about the numerology of the numbers of the planes. Supposedly they have some occult symbolic meaning, which is not really related to Islam, 1177, 175, and 93. But I don't believe in conspiracy theories, and we got to avoid future events like that. And we do have national security, binational, and the Dragon Army is a binationalist call for a public-private partnership. Is Canada, US joint, and Mexico, and all countries, and even the islands of North America, because the islands, Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba is a paradox because now they're joining BRICS and is a communist socialist paradox, but they're part of North America. Cuba is North America. So as much as I call for integration of the North American civilizational complex and my protocols, blah, 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 encouraging all to work out, train, exercise today with consent, hygiene, hug like you never hugged before, with consent, hygiene, hug like you never hugged before, with consent and hygiene, hug like you never hugged before, like a great period of hockey and NHL. And I gotta send some love to the youth, because they're innocent, the children and the youth. And I gotta say to my brother Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense, Minister of National Defense, Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense, Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense, and Austin Powell. You gotta put a new protocol before you put a uniform for the defense forces of North America. Canada, US, you gotta go change some diapers in the daycares and see who you're fighting for, because you don't want to do no business with mercs. You don't want nothing to do with mercs. I do not want to do any business whatsoever with mercs. We're not mercenaries. If you're gonna join the Canadian Armed Forces or the US Force, you gotta have some esprit de corps. Esprit de corps, some LOV, you know, some understanding for today and for the hope for tomorrow, for the North American Civilizational Collective and all ALL who come to join us here. You know, I pledge allegiance to the 40 plus million, 44 million, 44 million now of Canadians and all come to join us, you know, and the king is absent. And my brothers and sisters in the USA, North Americans, and pledge your allegiance, thou our family, yours truly. Pledge your allegiance, thou our family, yours truly. Pledge your allegiance, thou our family. And now we're going to put up a little bit for that French because we love Privee. I just want to sing some rock and roll song with that. So the DRT theory, and we got the North Americans unite, and I got to discuss again on one appellation, one, and a little bit of a spiritual, because it's Sunday spiritual, you know. So the Sabbath ends at sunset, starts Friday midnight, about the goddess, the goddess. You know, I do say goddess, GODDSS, you know, dances with a brother and a son. I don't have all the spiritual answers, but, you know, there's the goddess temple, which I will to build. And of course, the goddess, GODDSS, is in the Bible. It's biblical. It's biblical. Read Genesis chapter 50, come back to me. Read, you know, the appellation, the dance of Miriam, and of course read Acts, book of Acts. You can see the goddess Artemis mentioned there, and of course in the Bible there's mention of the goddesses, and there's mention of course several marriages where it's called the translation. You know, some things are lost in translation sometimes, and the pyramids, I don't know how they were built. I always joke a little bit on the funny humor. I say that men don't know how the pyramids were built because they were built by women. Men don't know how the pyramids were built because they were built by women. The men don't know how the pyramids were built because they were built by women. But what I do know is that they're temples and tombs. The pyramids are temples and tombs. And send 1/3 of me in New Jersey, Hampton with Papa Crowley. 1/3 of me on Mount Royal, Montreal Island, atop Mount Royal there. Mount Belvedere, Mount Royal, and 1/3 of me on the city of the pyramids. 1/3 of me on the city of the pyramids, where the pyramids lay. You know, that's, you know, we can build our own pyramids, new pyramids here today, starting from today in the North American Collective. We can build some rock and roll for the firefighters in California. And we're gonna switch it to that French a bit because we love Privee. Gotta give some LOV, some of that love by action. Giving them some sponsors, some massages after again, and that work, that firefighting. It ain't easy, gotta do. It ain't all about the blah blah blah. It takes some action, gotta take some brains and muscle. LOV to the firefighters. Bring them here after you're done and after the fires are already wildfires. I'm volunteering. Put them in some hotels, motels, Trump or whatever, public billionaires, millionaires, Wall Street, and I'll volunteer to wash their feet, give them some massages, you know, sing some rock and roll for the firefighters. And we got some Quebec firefighters who went there, who went in California. We got to get that North American Union Public-Private Partnership. Let's go sing some of that rock and roll on the road up in the go for the truckers and the butchers and the firefighters. Got to get some LOV, you know that you see. For the black and white and rainbow dragon, that's a go. Hey, don't move the goalpost. Gotta sing it for, you know, farmers and the butchers. Gotta give some swing those hips. Hey, I don't know about that 51 state, but I know the king is absent. Gotta get that federation, that republic. Hey, that republic. That's the rock and roll president, Rainbow Dragon. Got those kisses, shake those hips. Hug like you never hugged before. That's what I said, miss. I gotta play Mr. Sister and that little brother. Gotta sing it for the rainbow, for the black and white up and you know the sky's blue. You see the hawk and the stars, you gotta put that maple inside. Maple and the fleur-de-lis, you know that you gotta go today with this, for the hiss. For the do up and the sing those hips and melody up in the trip. You know that we swing and don't miss. Gotta sing it and go money for the guitar. But I gotta sing, you got the plenty of scars. Hey, The firefighters LOV, give them some hugs so that you can see. Give them some hugs so that you can see. Give them some hugs so that you can be. Give them some hugs so that you can be. For the left and for the right. For the left and for the side. For another light. For another light up in the light. For another light up in the sight. So give some charity, you know, don't be so selfish. That's the Wall Street that you see. Rock and roll from this aspect that I sing it 24/7 on the slash up in the day and the night, up in the day and the night, another light, so that you can see, like Céline Dion a switch into that French, et bienvenue dans la grotte du dragon de l'arc-en-ciel, une chanson de ce dimanche, puis que je vous encourage de faire bien un peu d'amour, Québécois québécoise, aujourd'hui ça lance, on est le 12 janvier du dimanche, il y a de la neige, ça patine dans la belle province. Hey, les travailleurs publics et les travailleurs de Québec, ça change sa face. Encore des centrales. Je vais commencer par envoyer un peu d'amour. Merci pour le don. Justement, je voulais m'acheter du café. Puis bien sûr, j'ai un don du café. Ça dit que c'est fait au Canada, mais bien sûr, on n'a pas de café. Fait que la seule critique, parallèlement à dire qu'est-ce que j'aimerais que la prochaine fois, ben, ça soit marqué pas juste fait au Canada, made in Canada, mais que ça indique le pays d'origine. Je suis un peu fixé là-dessus, j'aime ça, le café beaucoup, fait que je regarde toujours le pays d'origine, fait que c'est possible que le café provienne du Brésil, du Guatemala, du Cuba, du Panama, d'Équateur, de la Colombie, du Pérou, bien sûr, même de l'Afrique, de l'Ouganda, de l'Éthiopie, de la Côte d'Ivoire, ou même du Vietnam, fait que, merci pour le don, ça m'a fait un bon don, fait que justement, je l'ai m'acheté, mais j'ai un bon don pour la sécurité alimentaire. Fait que merci, merci, merci. Puis ça aussi, ça a été un petit don qu'on m'a fait. Merci parce que maintenant, je suis juste en crise financière, mais mon loyer est payé, je dois dire la gratitude. Hein? J'ai payé mon loyer, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité, puis j'ai du café, du thé, puis aujourd'hui, j'ai de quoi manger. Fait que je peux pouvoir faire du travail comme je fais du travail indépendant, artistique, bien sûr en géopolitique. C'est ça mon royaume, mon domaine. Vous savez que j'ai l'Asperger's, l'autisme mouvement fonctionnel. Fait que j'ai des intérêts obsessifs. Fait que c'est des intérêts obsessifs, bien sûr. Des intérêts obsessifs, bien sûr, que je possède. Fait que c'est 24/24, l'entraînement physique, l'analyse, la théorie en géopolitique. J'ai même prévu la station qui se déroule en ce moment. Je l'ai prévu en 2019, en octobre, en novembre. Fait que c'est ça que je fais depuis bien des années. Dès le matin au soir, l'après-midi, c'est toujours constamment la géopolitique d'une manière ou d'une autre. C'est toujours faire la révision des événements quotidiens ou hebdomadaires, mensuels, annuels, puis aller dans le 20e siècle, les études, l'analyse des événements, puis des réalités en géopolitique qui se passent dans le passé, puis du présent, puis peut-être prévoir le futur, comme j'ai prévu en 2019, en octobre, qu'il y aura sur l'horizon, il y aura une conflagration internationale. Je l'avais prévu, la situation actuelle mondiale, en 2019. Encore une fois, je dois dire merci pour ce caramel et rose de champ, c'est fait avec amour dans Charlevoix. Fait avec amour dans Charlevoix. Produit avec amour dans Charlevoix. Produit avec amour dans Charlevoix. Amour. Charlevoix. Hein? C'est-tu la voix de Charles ou Charlevoix? Ou voix comme voir ou la voix comme le parler? L'amour du français, il faut avoir de l'amour pour le français. Puis, comme je dis toujours, mais en tant que Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain, mais il faut nous-mêmes qu'on fasse un effort, pour quelqu'un, quand il faut un individu qui n'a pas vraiment la maîtrise du français, puis du français du Québec 100%, mais qui fasse un effort, il faut applaudir, puis il faut dire, mais faites un effort, vous vous améliorez, mais je vois que vous vous améliorez dans le français, fait qu'il faut toujours faire encourager les gens, parce que il faut qu'on fasse un effort aussi en tant que Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain aussi, l'effort pour le français. Mais en tout cas, puis ça a été bon. C'est les éboulements, puis le nom de la ville, les éboulements en Charlevoix, ça me fait penser à une petite comédie. J'ai fait artistique dans ma vie, une petite chanson de rock'n'roll. Les éboulements de Charlevoix, les éboulements de Charlevoix. Le roi est absent, ça danse, ça fait de pacte avec le diable pour l'en traverser, la belle province, le folklore. Des régions, des provinces, le folklore, la belle province, puis ça danse avec le diable, puis ça tape des mains, puis des pieds, puis ça danse. La danse que je préfère, le dragon en arc-en-ciel, le chazou, le noir, puis le blanc, puis ça danse. En cercle, puis ça bouge. Du caramel dans la bouche, bouche les oreilles, ça va s'entendre. Du caramel dans la bouche. Fait. Merci beaucoup, une bonne production du Québec, Québec, Canada, Amérique du Nord, parce que moi, quand je dis local, quand je fais référence locale, production locale, c'est plutôt pas juste le Québec, Canada, mais Québec, Canada, États-Unis. Parce que je dis souvent, je suis Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain. Je suis Nord-Américain, Canadien, Québécois. Je suis Canadien, Québécois, Nord-Américain. Puis aujourd'hui, je vais discuter un peu de la géopolitique. Vraiment, parce que c'est c'est ça que je suis. Je suis pas juste un artiste, athlète indépendant, un mystique, mais je suis aussi un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique. La géopolitique, c'est mon intérêt spécial. Ben, c'est pas vraiment un intérêt obsessif. J'aime pas utiliser la terminologie obsessive, même si pour les autistes hautement fonctionnels, aussi connus comme les Aspergers, ceux qui ont l'Aspergers, qui vivent avec cette condition de neurodivergence comme moi-même, c'est considéré comme une obsession. Mais obsession, là, c'est plus négatif tant que les Aspergers comme moi-même, on peut être très bon dans ses intérêts spéciaux. Fait que moi, l'analyse, la théorie, la géopolitique, c'est au quotidien. C'est très intense, c'est très concentré quand je parle, quand je discute des événements de la géopolitique, quand je fais des révisions de la géopolitique. C'est vraiment au quotidien, c'est constamment 24/24, parallèlement avec l'entraînement physique et mon intérêt spéciaux qu'on appelle intérêt intense, spécial, puis l'entraînement physique, mais la danse, c'est l'entraînement physique que je préfère, ainsi que le sport, c'est la danse, mon sport préféré, puis avec ça, la trinité, c'est le rock'n'roll, la géopolitique, la danse, le rock'n'roll, la danse, la géopolitique, le rock'n'roll, c'est 24/24, puis je fais au quotidien, c'est ça que je fais au quotidien, la danse, la géopolitique, la danse, puis la rock'n'roll, comme je viens de vous voyez bientôt, tantôt. Fait que là, il faut laisser il faut que vous oubliez tout que je sois pansexuel, androgyne, monsieur, madame, 50-50, homme, femme, androgyne, puis Asperger's, il faut que je vous concentrez sur qu'est-ce que je vais dire. Maintenant, je vais prononcer sur la géopolitique. Il faut savoir à 100%, mon oncle Legault, il faut qu'il sache, mon cousin Justin Trudeau, des fois je suis 50-50, 70-30, 90-10. Tu sais, ça dépend sur quel point. Des fois, je dis, ben, c'est peut-être pas la meilleure chose à faire ou de la politique à implémenter, mais c'est sûr que des fois, on donne, on remet, puis on donne sa table, on discute, mais on n'est pas des ennemis. Tu sais, on est sur l'équipe Québec-Canada, Amérique du Nord. On doit, en tant que Nord-Américain, en tant que Québécois, Canadien, il faut qu'en géopolitique, on sache exactement le principe que l'intérêt principal, ne pas prendre en considération les autres points, c'est que notre intérêt principal, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations intégrées possibles avec les États-Unis. Ça, c'est la réalité géopolitique. Oubliez les autres considérations, c'est fondamentalement, par principe, en tant que Québécois, Canadiens, Nord-Américains, nos intérêts principaux, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec nos frères et sœurs aux États-Unis, nos concitoyens du collectif nord-américain et de l'Amérique du Nord. Fondamentalement, principalement, et même qu'en géopolitique, notre peut-être seul intérêt en tant que Québécois canadiens, c'est un paradoxe parce qu'on a un océan à l'Atlantique, l'océan Atlantique à l'est, puis à l'ouest, on a l'océan Pacifique, puis c'est sûr, dans le nord, c'est possible qu'on est proche, on a la Chine puis la Russie puis la Chine, dans l'Arctique, dans le nord éloigné, le Canada, c'est le deuxième pays le plus étendu au monde en tant que géographie, mais principalement, notre intérêt principal, puis fondamentalement, en tant que Québécois canadien, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec les États-Unis. Puis même, c'est peut-être notre principal intérêt. C'est d'avoir les meilleurs intérêts économiques, relations principales, c'est ça. les relations principales, fondamentalement, c'est ça, en géopolitique, c'est quand même, c'est ça, c'est complexe, des fois, les relations, ça peut être complexe. Puis moi aussi, dans mes analyses en géopolitique, ils peuvent être un peu sophistiqués, académiques, un peu intellectuels dans le cosmopolite. Puis, mais principalement, puis le plus simple possible, c'est notre, en tant que Québécois, l'intérêt fondamental, principal, c'est qu'on aille en géopolitique, dans la géopolitique de l'Amérique du Nord, pour la continuité de l'harmonie, puis la paix, puis le bien-être, c'est qu'on aille les relations les plus en santé, en sécurité, en économie, en politique, dans le sport, dans l'infrastructure, dans la collaboration sur tous les niveaux politiques, de sécurité nationale, de sécurité du complexe nord-américain, de la politique, puis bien sûr de l'économie, des finances, puis du bien-être des citoyens aussi en tant que citoyens individus qui vous encouragent à l'entraînement physique. L'entraînement physique, parallèlement avec la gratitude, c'est bon pour la santé mentale, parce que la civilisation, c'est un privilège. Merci Hydro-Québec pour les centrales, les travailleurs du 20e siècle qui ont bâti toutes les centrales pour que j'aille l'électricité. pour prendre un bain, parce que je ne peux pas me permettre un massage thérapeutique, j'aimerais ça, mais financer les pompiers. Un massage thérapeutique millionnaire, milliardaire, Céline Dion, Pelado, financer les pompiers, financer ceux qui les travaux publics. Parce que ça prend du public et du privé, mais fondamentalement, de la géopolitique, il faut savoir, bien sûr, que c'est fondamentalement notre intérêt principal, c'est avoir des relations, les meilleures relations, notre intérêt fondamental et principal avec les États-Unis, d'attendre rock'n'roll. On ne peut pas s'ostiner avec ça. Ça, c'est la réalité de la géopolitique. D'attendre rock'n'roll. Notre intérêt principal en tant que Québécois, Canadiens, Nord-Américains, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec nos frères et sœurs aux États-Unis, en économie, en finance, en politique. Puis même que j'essaie d'être un citoyen du monde, puis j'essaie d'être universel, je suis le plus que je peux l'être, mais fondamentalement, je suis Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain. C'est chez nous ici. Personnellement, je ne me considère pas en étant un membre d'une diaspora. C'est chez nous. Puis je vous marie, on se marie, je vous considère ma famille, Québécois et Québécoises, les Canadiens, les Nord-Américains, puis tous ceux qui viennent nous rejoindre, évidemment, tous ceux qui viennent nous rejoindre. Puis moi-même, avec ma condition de neurodivergence, ça n'a pas été facile en tant qu'autiste Asperger. Puis moi, quand j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017, ça fait plus que 7 ans, j'ai traversé le Canada de côte à côte, de côte à côte, de côte à côte. J'ai traversé le Canada, je suis allé bien sûr à la côte ouest, en Colombie-Britannique, à Vancouver. Puis là, je suis allé en Colombie-Britannique, je suis retourné, puis en septembre, je suis allé à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse, en 2017. Avant ça, j'étais en dépression, j'étais suicidaire. Cet événement, ça m'a fait un réveil, puis j'ai dit tellement de choses à faire, à voir au Québec, au Canada, que j'ai sorti de la dépression, j'ai commencé à faire de l'entraînement physique, j'ai perdu entre 80 et 93 livres, puis même j'ai créé mon propre système d'entraînement physique, puis c'est là que j'ai établi, après avoir traversé le Canada, j'ai établi un esprit de corps solide avec le Québec, le Canada, puis l'Amérique du Nord, il y a plus que 7 ans. Puis je fais appel, bien sûr, avec les États-Unis, qu'on fasse un census, qu'on fasse la création d'un passeport commun, puis une unité d'échange, une monnaie comme que les Européens ont fait, la création de l'euro en Europe, puis qu'on crée une banque centrale commune, qu'on s'intègre, puis qu'on standardise les prix, puis pour la sécurité, puis la défense, puis bien sûr, le roi est absent, mes chers. Le roi est absent, le roi est absent. Le roi est absent. Je vous défendrai, mais juste pour la défense, s'il y aurait une invasion d'externe, d'un autre pays, que ce soit X, Y, Z. Je suis le premier à les rejoindre, mais seulement pour la défense. Mes initiatives, mes protocoles sont pour la défense, la sécurité puis le service. C'est ça les principes de mes initiatives. Puis quand je dis que je vous fais appel à tous et toutes, prêtez allégeance les jours, de soutenir mon rêve, le rêve qui se manifeste comme le royaume de la déesse et du dragon qui danse, c'est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé pour l'Amérique du Nord, pour l'Amérique du Nord, pour l'Amérique du Nord. Qu'est-ce que j'appelle le collectif nord-américain? Pour la défense, la sécurité, puis le service. La sécurité, le service, la défense, puis la renaissance. La sécurité, la défense, parce qu'on a bien l'infrastructure à reconstruire. Les aqueducs, les ponts, l'infrastructure du collectif nord-américain. Fait que fondamentalement, principalement, notre intérêt commun, puis celle des États-Unis aussi, vice-versa, c'est d'avoir des relations les meilleures possibles avec le Canada et les États-Unis. That's it, that's all, rock'n'roll. On est un collectif émergent de civilisation. Fondamentalement, c'est ça notre intérêt fondamental et principal. Parce qu'on n'a pas d'autres pays, d'autres entités politiques. On n'a pas d'autres pouvoirs politiques, entités politiques. Le Québec, le Canada, le roi est absent. Des fois, avec mon oncle Legault, ben, je vois pas 50-50, 70-30 sur certains sujets, mais puis je ne suis pas caquiste. Je ne vous dis pas pour qui j'ai voté, pour qui je voterai, pourquoi. Le roi est absent. C'est le temps pour la République, c'est le temps pour un partenariat public-privé, puis l'intégration du collectif nord-américain, puis qu'on bâtit d'autres centrales Hydro-Québec. Puis pour le français, mais comme je dis en anglais tantôt, pour l'intégration, pour la sécurité, le service, puis la défense seulement, la défense pour la renaissance aussi, que mes frères et sœurs, bien sûr, en anglais, puis quand, moi aussi, les réincarnations, j'ai été né aux États-Unis 3 fois, une fois femme, 2 fois 1, puis j'ai servi dans l'armée des États-Unis 2 fois dans des vies antérieures. Puis je fais un appel pour qu'ils vont pouvoir écouter une chanson de Céline Dion avec la traduction à chaque semaine ou chaque jour. Ça, ils vont faire un effort. Faire ah ouais, faites un effort pour les 10 millions de Québécois dans le collectif nord-américain. Pour le français, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose qu'il faut qu'on fasse nous autres en tant qu'individus. Mais, comme je dis, mon oncle Legault, il y a une certaine sagesse que moi, je ne possède pas peut-être. C'est sûr que des fois, ben, je ne vois pas. Des fois, sur des choses comme le racisme, comme l'intégration, il faut qu'on fasse un effort nous-mêmes, tu sais. Il faut qu'on fasse un effort pour mes frères et sœurs noirs, tu sais. Je donne des câlins, des bisous, je mets sur la table des bisous parce que des câlins, puis de l'amour, puis de l'argent, je n'ai pas. Je suis moi-même en stress financier. Il faut qu'on fasse un effort. Des fois, tu sais, on a de l'effort à faire. La culture, des échanges culturels, puis encourager les gens, puis même financer les gens à l'entraînement physique et financer les gens à la culture aussi. Il faut mettons, tu sais, comme moi, je suis allé souvent au centre de culture, mais en regardant du théâtre, de la danse ou de la comédie francophone, tu sais, il faut peut-être, je sais pas, avec le Canada, faites des avis, donnez des lettres puis, aux citoyens les inviter à la participation par un partenariat public le plus possible, tu sais, parce qu'il faut qu'on fasse un effort nous-mêmes. Il faut qu'on fasse un effort nous-mêmes, puis qu'on encourage cet effort, puis l'effort pour la francisation, ça prend l'effort individuel aussi. Parce il y a une manière de le faire aussi, tu sais. Des fois, on ne s'entend pas, on a des frustrations, puis c'est des temps difficiles, oui. Mais paradoxe, j'ai la solution pour certaines choses, pas pour toutes. Mais j'ai la théorie de la refusion de la dette, la TRD, qui est la seule et unique solution au paradoxe des finances publiques qui se passe maintenant. Puis encore une fois, c'est un paradoxe parce que moi aussi, avec l'autisme mouvement fonctionnel, l'Asperger's, puis c'est un paradoxe que la géopolitique, ça aurait pu être quelque chose d'autre. Mon intérêt spécial, qu'est-ce qu'on appelle les intérêts obsessifs des Asperger's, qu'il faut encourager aussi et soutenir. Et bien sûr, ben, j'utilise pas le mot obsessif parce que pour moi, c'est naturel, puis ça se passe au quotidien, l'analyse, la théorie en géopolitique. Puis quand on étudie la géopolitique, il faut savoir un peu des finances publiques, même si je ne suis pas un expert, mais je sais qu'en ce moment, cette année 2024, on a payé 46,5 milliards, 1 milliard 109 zéros sur la dette publique, sur l'intérêt sur la dette publique seulement. En 2020-2021, on a payé 20,3 milliards. 20,3 milliards, c'est 20 000 millions. Fait qu'imaginez-vous, là, c'est plus que le double. 20,3 fois 2, c'est 40,6. C'est rendu à 46,5. C'est plus que le double en 3 ans, c'est sûr qu'à cause de la COVID. Puis moi-même, ici, dans ma grotte de dragon arc-en-ciel, je vais marquer 5 ans. En février-mars, mi-février à mi-mars. Ici, en 2020, je pensais que j'allais mourir. J'ai eu la COVID. Je me suis fait vacciner 3 fois. J'ai eu la COVID juste ici dans ma grotte de dragon arc-en-ciel. Je pensais je pensais que j'allais mourir. Dans certains, quand je dis souvent, je suis mort ici, je suis en train de renaître ici. Il n'y a rien que je vais retourner en arrière personnellement. Tu sais. Je vois ma vie aujourd'hui, je suis joyeux, juste financièrement. Je vis un stress financier. En ce moment, je vis un stress financier, mais je vis pour aujourd'hui, avec l'espoir pour demain, au moins pour le collectif nord-américain, puis fondamentalement en géopolitique, fondamentalement, notre intérêt principal, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec les États-Unis, d'attendre, même si on veut s'impliquer dans la géopolitique externe d'une manière, c'est principalement, fondamentalement, c'est pour le collectif nord-américain, puis ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, qui en dedans de ma théorie est intégrée la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est la théorie que les Européens, dans la communauté européenne, ils ont fait l'implémentation par la création de l'unité d'échange commune pour les Européens, l'euro, puis pour la Banque centrale de l'Europe. La BCE, Banque centrale de l'Europe, ils ont détruit leur Banque centrale nationale. Fait qu'en Amérique du Nord, on va faire pareil. Je fais une petite discussion sur la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. C'est ma théorie, puis c'est la seule et unique solution. Encore une fois, on paye 46,5 milliards d'intérêts, juste d'intérêt sur la dette publique. La dette publique, l'intérêt payé sur la dette publique a plus que doublé en 3 ans. Imaginez-vous en tant qu'individu citoyen, comme moi en tant qu'individu citoyen, là, si ma dette, mon intérêt est allé de 156 $ à 333 $. De 156 $, ça aurait été le double. De 156 $, ça aurait été le double. Ça aurait été le double de 156 $, ça aurait été le double maintenant. Imaginez, puis en tant que le salaire n'a pas augmenté de 5, 10 ou 15 %, si le salaire ne double pas, il augmente juste de 5, 10 ou peut-être 15 %, ça veut dire qu'il va falloir couper dans le budget, il va falloir couper moins, boire, je sais pas, couper le bacon, couper le lait, couper le Vidéotron, couper le service d'Internet, couper le cellulaire, il va falloir. Fait que c'est ça qui arrive maintenant. Puis avec les services publics, c'est possible qu'on ait un effondrement des finances publiques demain pour la pleine lune. Ça commence le 13 janvier ou même le matin avant midi quand Donald Trump va être inauguré en tant que président le 20 janvier. Le 20 janvier, son inauguration, c'est dans 8 jours. C'est dans une semaine et un jour. Fait que c'est possible qu'un effondrement des finances publiques canadiennes arrive. C'est un scénario très, très néfaste. C'est un scénario possible parce que payer l'intérêt sur la dette publique a doublé. Ça a plus que doublé de 20,3 milliards. Puis vous pouvez faire la vérification avec la Banque centrale. Mon cousin Tiff McClure, vous pouvez faire cette vérification, mais paradoxe, j'ai la solution, la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, qui inclut la théorie d'intégration monétaire. Fait que la TRD, théorie R, refusion D de la dette. Fait que c'est pour ça que je fais l'appel à mon cousin Justin Trudeau, mon oncle Legault, puis par un partenariat public-privé, parce que ça va prendre un partenariat public-privé pour l'implémentation de ma TRD, pour la création de l'unité d'échange universelle, puis pour la construction du Colisée du peuple nord-américain impérial sur la frontière Canada-États-Unis, sur la frontière du Canada et des États-Unis, qu'on bâtit un Colisée ensemble pour l'Union de l'Amérique du Nord dans un partenariat public-privé, une république démocratique. Un partenariat public-privé en tant que centriste pro-révolutionnaire nord-américain. La TRD, je vous l'explique. La TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, ça inclut la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est qu'est-ce qu'on fait en Europe. On va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, mon 10 000 à la Banque Royale, incluant mon 10 000 en tant que citoyen consommateur, mon 10 000 à la Banque Royale. On va prendre ma dette, ta dette, votre dette de côte à côte avec les États-Unis en même temps. Toute cette dette publique-privée, on va faire la conversion de la dette publique-privée du Canada, du dollar des États-Unis dans la devise des États-Unis. Fait qu'on va convertir toute la dette publique-privée canadienne dans la devise des États-Unis. On va mettre ensemble, faire l'addition avec la dette des États-Unis. Tout cet argent-là, la dette publique-privée, ça a été de l'argent en circulation pour la création d'une nouvelle banque centrale de l'Amérique du Nord. Puis ça peut s'étendre avec le Mexique parce qu'ils font partie de l'Amérique du Nord, mais principalement binational Canada-États-Unis avec le Mexique, puis avec Cuba, c'est le paradoxe, Jamaïque, Haïti, les autres pays, ils font partie du collectif nord-américain, c'est des pays, les îles, ils font partie de l'Amérique du Nord, mais fondamentalement Canada et États-Unis, on va prendre toute la dette publique, cet argent-là, ça va fonder l'argent initial pour une nouvelle banque. On va faire la création d'une nouvelle monnaie appelée Louis. En anglais, c'est pareil, on ne se signera pas. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. Le UI. L'unité d'échange universel. L'unité d'échange universel. U point unité, un point échange, U point universel. L'unité d'échange universel. L'UI, on va faire ensemble l'UI, unité d'échange universel pour la création de cette nouvelle banque. Avec cet argent-là, on va rebâtir l'infrastructure du collectif nord-américain. On va bâtir plus de centrales d'Hydro-Québec. On va financer les gens au tourisme, financer les gens à travers le Canada et le Québec. On va financer les gens à l'entraînement physique. On va bâtir les 44 tunnels fondés sur le montagne de Cheyenne, puis inspirés par le village souterrain de Montréal. On va bâtir 44 tunnels, 44. Le chiffre après 43, avant 45, c'est 44 tunnels à travers l'Amérique du Nord dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire pour la continuité du collectif nord-américain, pour la continuité de la civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord, pour la continuité de la civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord. On va bâtir 44 tunnels. Des tunnels, puis on va mettre bien sûr des canettes, puis de la nourriture dedans, puis pour pouvoir mettre des citoyens pour la continuité du complexe nord-américain de civilisation, du complexe de civilisation nord-américain, pour la continuité de la civilisation nord-américaine de l'Amérique du Nord. On va devoir bâtir 44 tunnels. Avec cet argent-là, on va rebâtir l'infrastructure, rebâtir les ponts, bâtir d'autres centrales d'Hydro-Québec, financer les gens à faire l'entraînement physique, Fait qu'on va faire du bien commun avec ça. Ça va être fondé sur une nouvelle entente, un nouveau accord du Mont-Royal Belvedere, le chef de l'Amérique du Nord, de Partenariat public-privé, mon frère Scorpion Bill Gates. Des fois, je suis pas d'accord, mais sur la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, il n'y a pas de solution. Là. Ça a plus que doublé, payer l'intérêt sur la dette publique. Fait que c'est la seule solution en ce moment. Vous pouvez vous ostiner tant que vous voudrez, mais il n'y a pas d'autre solution que la théorie de la refusion de la dette. That's all. Fait que, en vous encourageant à faire l'entraînement physique ce dimanche 12 janvier, ça s'approche la pleine lune, fait que pour moi c'est une fête. Je vais faire le nettoyage ici de mon office, mon temple, puis je vends bien sûr 93%, je vais auction de qu'est-ce que vous voyez dedans. Je suis présentement juste financièrement stressé, mais je vis un stress financier, mais pour manger tantôt, j'ai des galettes, fait que j'ai du caramel un peu qui me reste, des bonbons, du sucrerie, j'aime ça le sucré, puis j'ai du café, puis je vais prendre un bain pour substituer parce que j'aimerais ça me permettre un massage thérapeutique, mais je peux pas me permettre, mais millionnaire, milliardaire, financer les pompiers, un massage thérapeutique, les travailleurs publics qui ramassent les poubelles, le compostage, le recyclage, c'est trois services publics, puis soutenir le rêve de votre dragon arc-en-ciel. Mon rêve, c'est fondamentalement un appel pour un partenariat public-privé. Le royaume de la déesse et du dragon qui danse, c'est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé. C'est ça mon rêve, un appel pour un partenariat public-privé pour rebâtir l'infrastructure du collectif nord-américain, bâtir les 44 tunnels sur la frontière canado-états-unienne, bâtir, construire le Colisée du peuple nord-américain impérial, le Colisée du peuple nord-américain impérial, en saluant les travailleurs en construction. Les travailleurs en construction, c'est eux autres qu'il faut encourager amour puis encourager, puis parce que c'est eux autres qui construisent, qui bâtissent, qui construisent, c'est les travailleurs en construction qui construisent avec le savoir-faire puis le muscle, bien sûr, qui seront bâtis, puis qu'on va construire à bâtir, puis qu'on va continuer à bâtir le complexe de civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord avec les centrales d'Hydro-Québec, puis bien sûr les gratte-ciels, puis bien sûr les travailleurs publics qui travaillent, qui changent les aqueducs, bâtir plus d'aqueducs. Il faut du renouveau de l'infrastructure du collectif nord-américain. On a bien des ponts à travers l'Amérique du Nord, l'infrastructure, on a bien des autoroutes qu'il faut rebâtir. C'est pour ça la MATRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, on va pouvoir financer toute cette reconstruction de l'Amérique du Nord, financer les gens à l'entraînement physique aussi, parce que ça fait bien pour le bien-être, puis le tourisme. Moi, quand j'ai traversé le Canada en 2017, c'est là que je suis sorti de ma dépression, parce que j'ai eu un réveil en août et en septembre. J'ai dit, waouh, quand je suis arrivé à Banff, quand j'ai traversé le Québec, je suis allé à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse, j'ai eu, waouh, quel pays, tellement de choses à voir, à faire. Puis j'ai établi un esprit de corps solide avec le Québec, le Canada puis l'Amérique du Nord. Puis je vous considère famille. Tu sais, puis en tant que Nord-Américain, on a de côte à côte de sien pour la défense, la sécurité puis le service. Puis il faut continuer à faire, bien sûr, de bâtir le central d'Hydro-Québec, bâtir plus de centrales. Puis il faut la reconstitution des autoroutes aussi. Des autoroutes, puis les parcs publics, c'est un partenariat public-privé, la TRD, de bâtir, mettre plus de couleurs sur les bancs du Mont-Royal, que je rêve, amenez-moi les outils, les pinceaux puis les outils, puis je vais mettre de la peinture, je vais peinturer les bancs du Mont-Royal en rose ou rouge, ma couleur préférée est rouge, puis on va pouvoir mettre ensemble les trois. Les étoiles des États-Unis avec la fleur de lys, puis la feuille d'érable, on va pouvoir les mettre ensemble. Si Mexique ils veulent, on va pouvoir mettre le serpent puis l'aigle aussi. L'aigle puis le serpent du Mexique aussi, s'ils veulent. Sinon, ben, ça va bien être complémentaire. La fleur de lys, d'en bas, puis avec en haut les étoiles des États-Unis, on va pouvoir mettre une union de l'Amérique du Nord, comme que l'Union européenne a fait. Puis pour le français, on va continuer à le faire. Puis je vais encourager l'armée, les Américains, à écouter plus de chansons de Céline Dion au quotidien, puis faire de la traduction. Puis l'armée des États-Unis, puis notre armée des États-Unis, on va rebâtir l'armée du dragon pour la défense, la sécurité, le service, le principe seulement pour la défense, la sécurité, pour le service de côte à côte, océan à océan. That's it, that's all, rock and roll avec votre dragon arc-en-ciel ce dimanche. Je vous laisse avec une chanson du caramel, du béton, du ciment, la construction, des centrales québécoises, ensemble ça bouge. Je veux voir la danse sur les plaines, les 17 régions des provinces jusqu'au nord au sud. Avec nos frères et sœurs, on les invite, québécoises. Ah ouais, montrez-les qu'au Québec, on sait comment on danse, le folklore. Hey! Un peu sauvage, civilisation, latin, cordus, le latin, pas besoin, juste du vin, la même province, un peu de latin ensemble, juste un peu. Des chatouilles, ça dise, la devise, concordia, le salut, salutation, le latin bien français du bidon, ça danse. Ah oui, ensemble dans un cercle des montagnes, des plaines que ça danse, l'aigle, ça lance, même en hiver, ça neige, ça patine. On danse, ça rouille, pas de rouille, pas besoin. Si vous parlez pas d'amour, des actions, c'est pas je deviens sourd. Comme le soleil, ça danse, ça brille, le soleil, mon papa. Le soleil, mon papa. Je fais pas de pacte avec le diable, pas de besoin, mon frigidaire. Je le nettoie, j'ai besoin. Le sourire, le bonjour, le soleil, le bonjour. D'aujourd'hui pour demain, l'espoir. Québécoise, Canadien et non-américain. Fondamentalement, principalement, notre
premier intérêt fondamentalement principal, c'est avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec les États-Unis, qu'on fasse tout l'effort possible de ne pas avoir ce 25% sur tous les billets de tarifs. On fasse une union intégration, puis ça prend un partenariat public-privé, à travers. Puis je dois dire que Donald Trump, quand il a été posé la question s'il va faire une intervention militaire, il a sans hésitation, il n'a pas hésité, il a dit non, il n'a pas hésité, il a dit non, il n'a pas hésité, il a dit non. Il a dit économique, mais on ne peut pas se baser tout par la force puis par la puissance. On ne peut pas se baser tout sur Louis Cyr. Sur Louis Cyr, je l'ai rencontré, Louis Cyr, dans une autre vie. Je l'ai aidé à pousser des chevaux sur une calèche avec d'autres gens, puis j'ai fait du bras de fer, puis pendant 7 ans, j'ai pas pu utiliser mon bras droit, là, parce que il m'a battu comme 7 fois. Ben vite. Il a dit non, puis il a dit qu'il y a de l'amour. Il a dit j'aime les Canadiens, puis l'amour, ça va bien, l'amour, mais des fois, l'amour, ça prend de l'action, puis ça prend du centre aussi. Moi, en tant qu'androgyne pansexuel, monsieur, madame, avec mes cicatrices, avec toutes les choses que j'ai, puis bien sûr, j'ai pas besoin de m'espionner, le service secret de la Chine, le service secret de la Russie, pas besoin de m'espionner, rester là-bas, traverser pas l'océan, l'Atlantique, le Pacifique, j'ai pas besoin. Les services secrets des autres entités politiques hors le collectif nord-américain. Il faut qu'on fasse une intégrité pour l'intégration pour le service, la sécurité pour la défense du collectif nord-américain, l'intégration pour le service de la sécurité basée sur mes philosophies, la trinité de théorie de la refusion de la dette, la théorie d'intégration citoyenne, la théorie de la fusion démocratique, la théorie pour la quatrième dimension, l'amour. C'est ça qu'il faut qu'on fasse. Il n'y a pas d'autre solution. Il n'y a pas d'autre solution, mes chers. Ça, vous pouvez vous ostiner tant que vous voudrez, mais il n'y a pas d'autre solution que ma trinité de théorie, bien sûr, pour l'intégration du collectif nord-américain, pour qu'on fasse ensemble, Québécois et Québécoises. Là, je vous chante en bilingue. Puis je finis avec ça. Let's go! I know! That is some loving and some hugging, gotta kiss it, gotta swing it for the hips up in the trill. Hey, you know, gotta swing it, that survivor, gotta swing it, that survivor for the hips, you know that's. Kisses on the lips, God is blessed. La déesse qui bénit, Kadia. Les montagnes, le bleu ciel, que ça danse les étoiles, puis la fleur de lys ensemble, les étoiles. Des États-Unis avec la fleur de lys, on peut danser ensemble, que ça jase, ça traverse. Le rock'n'roll que je chante, on peut mettre la feuille d'érable, le sirop que ça danse, ça coule dans le café ressemble. Regarde, hey, le rock'n'roll de votre artiste, le dragon arc-en-ciel qui a pas d'argent pour une guitare. I don't got no money for the guitar. I got plenty of scars. Gotta kiss it for the love. Ain't nobody gotta say. Gotta only by the strength. We gotta get some loving. Gotta get some understanding. Goddess kisses. When they say God, I got a goddess it. A goddess that survives, goddess that's the temple, goddess that's the kisses. On the mountain shaking hips, say, you know that. Sing it, swing it, that's the main out, that's the main out. For the main out, that's the solution. Gotta kiss it for the bees, gotta kiss it for the trees, for the environment, you know. On the steel toes, that's they go. That's the construction workers on the floor. They gotta kiss. I got plenty of those kisses. From the goddess, plein de bisous de la déesse, que ça danse bien des loups. Et les ours sont où? Dans le nord de l'Arctique, ben ça danse à Saint-Damien. Les trois pistoles, ça descend ensemble à Gaspésie. Du rocher percé, les îles de la Madeleine, les poissons, plein de baleines, hey, plein de baleines, belle haleine, que ça danse en arc-en-ciel. De chez nous de la belle province, on ne parlait pas d'amour, je deviens sourd, rien savoir. En mode libre, faux sécuritaire en danse, paye des pompes, l'entraînement physique, bouge des fesses, bouge du nez, ça. Les sacs, ça va être dans le paquet. Un paquet bien d'infidange, travailleurs publics, les aqueducs. Ah oui, les pompes bougent, c'est ça, danse des bisous. Ça, avec la langue sort. Hey, c'est une grenouille, ça danse comme la grenouille. La rivière, la montagne, le vin, ça sourd, ça danse mur. Del mur, du béton puis du ciment, ça monte. En haut, les gratte-ciel. Hey, construction, brick, du fromage puis du bain. Des beignes, Hey, let's go. You know that I sing it for the rock and roll, for the firefighters on the road, truckers on the go. I know that I swing those ships, never hit and never miss. Gotta kiss it for the dismissed. Like the General Rainbow Dragon, yeah. I got a rainbow, gotta show it those hips. Left or right, you know to this. Gotta drink some coffee milk, gotta drink some coffee with it. And some coffee with it. On the coffee coffee, that's the swing it. Swing it on the left, swing it on the north around the bottom, on the south, you know we go. For those states, you know we sound. That's the sunshine, that's the lips, that's the sunshine, that's the this. That's the sunshine, that's a miss, that's a missing hit, and this. For the kisses, that's the swinger. Rock and roll, you know they ask me, got it really nasty. I can go kiss my for world peace, I say that, kiss my for world peace, I say, kiss my for world peace, I say. I don't turn the other cheek, may I be avenged that 7 times 7-fold, please. I don't kiss the other cheek, may I be avenged that 7 times 7-fold, please. I don't turn the other cheek, may I be avenged 7 times 7-fold, please. I don't know about the shit. I live with my scars and I survived a lot of hits. I know my scars and I survived a lot of hits. I live with my scars and I survived a lot of hits. Rainbow Dragon, gotta kiss.